Morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on fostering collaborative leadership to improve psychosocial well-being in education. My name is Monica Huangfe, and I'm representing the European Federation of Education Employers. I'll have the pleasure to moderate the session today for you. Just a couple of words of introduction about the European Leadership Network Europe, but also Educational Leadership Network Europe and the European Educational Leadership Month. This session is part of the initiative dedicated to fostering collaborative leadership and is composed of the committed community of educational stakeholders led by 5 key stakeholders in the formal education network to enhance collaborative leadership across Europe. Within this initiative, we held over 30 webinars with various topics encompassing showcasing of good practices in the research field, but also going beyond this. We also contributed to shaping the EU teachers and trainers agenda and had also insightful discussions on bridging gaps between policy and practice on various levels in education. Now, I'm accompanied today by my wonderful colleagues from both ETUCE and EFEE secretariats and our speakers, of course. So I will now pass the floor to Martina Di Ridolfo, a policy coordinator from ETUCE, who is also one of the lead partners of the ELNE network. The floor is yours, Martina.
Thank you so much, Monica. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome also from my side. My name is Martina Di Ridolfo. I'm policy coordinator at ETUCE for digitalization and occupational health and safety. Just let me tell you that when Monica proposed me this webinar, I thought it would be a good idea to have a great synergy between two very important projects. On one hand, you already heard the context of ELNE, and on the other side, together with EFEE, we are also implementing a project which is titled APRES COVID. Despite the title, the project is not about COVID, but how COVID triggered new industrial relation dynamics, new challenges in the workplace, in education sector, and how these are having an impact today on the psychosocial risks in the education sector. For today, we thought of expanding the notion of occupational well-being and well-being in education to all the stakeholders concerned, and that's why we thought it was also important to have the students' view. During the APRES COVID project, we already had an exchange with some parent organizations, so it was highly time also to have the students on board. So while I will present you in a moment a few findings of the APRES COVID project that can be relevant also for the topic of our webinar today, we also wanted to hear from you which is your background, and because this webinar is open to many education stakeholders, just to set the ground on who we are and who is connected with us today. So if you could please share the QR code of the Mentimeter, and for the participants, take your phone and try to scan this QR code. I will do this with you. Education employers, education trade unions, Ministry for Education Malta, education trade unions, Hungarian Rectors Conference, FNE Portugal, Portuguese trade union, Health and Safety Office from Cyprus, education employers again. Fantastic. So we really have, we're just a few, but we really have a good diverse representation today. So stay tuned with me to explore together the findings of the APRES COVID project. So I will share my screen.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. So as I mentioned, throughout the project, we would like to explore social dialogue role and social partners' role in preventing and countering psychosocial risk in education. As social partners, we are adopting an occupational health and safety perspective, which is one of the pillar in the workplaces. So, as I mentioned before, we are analyzing the long-term impact that COVID as a social, economic, and health crisis had on the labor market in the education sector. And through the project, we also want to reinforce the capacity of our members to prevent and address psychosocial risks through social dialogue and collective bargaining. And throughout the activities, we have also tried to gather good practices and experience at different national level. And today you will hear from two specific examples, both from Slovenia and Portugal. So the project is composed of a stream of research activities that are composed of a survey that has been conducted among our members and a desk research that will be soon translated into a comprehensive research report, which is expected to be published in June 2025. We have recently also conducted a training seminar for education social partners, where we focused on two big dimensions of psychosocial risks, so the prevention aspect of psychosocial risks and the management aspect of psychosocial risks. Throughout the activities, we're also collecting feedback to revise joint practical guidelines on preventing and combating psychosocial risks that ETUCE and EFEE had previously developed about 9 years ago. And I really hope that discussion today with you can also be inspirational to have some concrete feedback also to integrate into these guidelines. In the context of the project, we have conducted 3 national case studies, one in Slovenia, one in Portugal, and one in Malta. It's of course the idea here is not to have a comprehensive view of the long-term effect of COVID on psychosocial risks and occupational well-being, but rather to engage directly with teachers, with education stakeholders, and that's why we conducted school visits throughout the 3 case studies. We visited, sorry, here there is a little mistake. We didn't visit 8 education institutions, but 6 education institutions, and we have engaged with several workers in the education sectors, spanning from teachers, university, academics, educational support personnel, and school leaders as well. In the framework of the studies, we've also had a social dialogue meeting to specifically try to advance on cooperation at the national level in terms of social dialogue on these topics. And the case studies were also a great opportunity to have concrete insights in the practice that our members are already implementing. So let's have a look together at some of the general findings that emerged throughout the case studies. As I mentioned before, these results should not be considered as results generally applicable to Europe, but they are the result of specific interviews and specific engagement that we had with the personnel in the education institutions that we visited. So first, what is the long-term impact? And here there is not a causing correlation between COVID and these factors, but what is the reality that teachers are facing today? In some cases, we saw that education personnel entered into a new normal, while in other cases, like it was the case of Portugal, COVID had the effect of exacerbating some existing challenges. The Maltese context was a bit different because, and we visited in Malta, we visited university and a second institution, a secondary level education institutions, and there we had more preparedness in terms of digital support already right before the pandemic, but also in terms of support, we really saw an overwhelming support that at least came out from the experience of the personnel that we interviewed. But on general terms, today, we have seen through these case studies an increased level of fatigue, sometimes also coupled with cynicism and emotional detachment in the aftermath of COVID. Digitalization was actually described as a very positive change for the educational context, as it was perceived, it is perceived as a good opportunity to improve cooperation. And at the same time, two fundamental aspects of digitalization also emerged as a challenge. First, an increasing episodes of violence and harassment in digital context, but also the right to disconnect. And on this point, just we have started together with EFEE yesterday a new journey for negotiating an autonomous agreement in the education sector on the right to disconnect and telework in the education sector. But really having policies on right to disconnect was, I think, the factor that emerged in all the education institutions that we visited. Then we were focusing in the project on teachers' occupational well-being, but one factor that was clear as of the first case study visit is that you cannot separate teachers' well-being from students' well-being. And what teachers face today is also increased student challenges in terms of psychosocial problems, violent behavior, and a big learning loss that hasn't been recovered since COVID. We will hear more in depth from Giuseppina today, from Obesu. So we will also have the direct perspective of students in a bit. Then parental expectation, especially of course a lower level of education, where families appear to have shifted the expectations on schools, as if schools were now expected also to undertake some of the roles that in the past were in the hands of family. As a general on a general level, in terms of challenges, and I partially mentioned this before, in some cases, COVID exacerbated the teacher shortage crisis. There were many cases, especially after COVID, of teachers going on early retirement, for instance, and some mentioned also the perception of exhaustion that in many cases constitutes an obstacle for retaining skilled teachers that eventually decide to leave the profession for better paid and also sectors with less pressure. Digital bullying, I already mentioned earlier, and then the mental health support. This aspect of support actually emerged in all institutions that we visited, as in some cases a school counselor is there. There is also some center open for students directly connected to the education institution, but support for mental health support is not sufficient at the moment yet. And where support is not there, then the burden risks to follow on personnel, school leaders. Insights from multi-stakeholder dialogue. So one of the key aspects that emerged throughout the case studies in relation to teachers' well-being is that the profession has a need of general respects from the society, and also a feel that the profession has lost the status that it had in the past. Some of the personnel that we interviewed considered that during COVID, they received a lot of consideration from the society, from the education authorities, but these has then decreased and become lighter in the aftermath of COVID. So concrete working conditions also include this aspect of feeling respect, feeling valued. Leadership dynamics, and this is very important for the topic of our webinar today. What we saw is that in many cases, the support that school leaders provided to the teachers, to their personnel, was considered as key to motivate staff. And in many cases, school leaders then received support in return. The need then of collective bargaining, also in connection to the right to disconnect, was also highlighted as an important step to undertake. And then the resource allocation, so the need for funding, for more support and funding to support mental health initiative and reduce the current bureaucracies. Just touching quickly upon this, because we will see some specific cases afterwards. So what worked? What worked was the horizontal and mutual support among staff, the support from the leaders, and also having professional networks, and where cooperation was possible, the intercooperation among different institutions, that was also perceived as an important factor. So looking ahead, what do we need for the recovery, and again for a long-term recovery? And again, here these are not fundings to take as generally applicable to Europe, but are just the result of the interviews that we had. So first, increased autonomy for teachers and schools, and this emerged particularly in the case study in Slovenia, particularly in the budgetary matters. Professional development, more investment on continuous professional development for teachers, and also reduced budget accessibility. One of the issues that we saw was that even when training is available, if you don't have, for instance, a substitute teacher that could replace you in the classroom, most of the time that could constitute a disadvantage for attending, for enrolling in CPD programs. Reduce administrative burden, streamlining process to allow teachers to focus on teaching rather than on all the administration that comes with it, mental health support, and increased resources. I will stop here, and I think we still have a few minutes, if I'm not wrong, Monica.
That's right.
So maybe if we have room for some questions, I would be happy to take them. And if you would like to know more about the project, you can visit the website of ETUCE EFEE. I will put the links in the chat for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. The links are already there.
Fantastic.
So you're one step ahead. Thank you very much for sharing those insights. And from side of EFEE, I must say, because we are doing this project together, for me it was very interesting to see how things, although vary from country to country because of the geographical location, the challenges seem to remain pretty much the same. However, of course, with different approaches to this. So I think the common denominator for all the case studies were definitely the emotional burden, right, of affecting both school leaders but also teachers. And I couldn't agree more with what you mentioned about this, horizontal mutual support among colleagues, because we realize how much the collegiality feeling is important to handle this. And equally, I'm looking forward to Giuseppina's intervention on students' perspective on this one, because I think we often talk about students, but not always, with them. So that's very interesting. Martina, I was wondering, when you've been saying, we we are working now on improving the guidelines and you know how to, let's say, be a bit more forward looking. I'm not sure if you could share already some I don't know insights. What do you think could be improved based on previous guidelines? But 9 years ago seems like a, I don't know, century ago by now, right? So what else do you, I mean, what can be done in that perspective so that guidelines are most up to date, and you know what we can do on practical level to make sure that they remain useful and practical?
Yeah, that's actually the key question. And I think that's one of the common problems we have when building tools at European level, is that we have to make sure these are also and particularly useful at the national and local level. And throughout the project, we have assessed the extent to which the guidelines were implemented and were known at a national level. And the feedback we got is that the guidelines have not been much implemented. So I think the first step is to make them more concrete. And for that, the collection of good practices that already started through the case studies. Today, we will probably see other good practices that could be usefully integrated in the guidelines. Definitely that's I think a key component that should be integrated in the guidelines. A reader-friendly approach, I think, would also would also be helpful. And yeah, I think at the moment these are the elements that we have. But yeah, it's still a learning process and a co-designing experience that we are going through. So I'm really keen on bringing some takeaways from today, also with the view of renewing the guidelines.
Yes, indeed. I couldn't agree more on reader-friendly approach. Thank you. I, of course, encourage our participants live here to also drop your questions in the chat while we are moving on, and we can always come back to them, as there will be a dedicated session on question and answers to all the speakers, Martina included, of course. Thank you very much. And now I'll carry on with the panel discussion that will be opened by Nives Počkar. We'll move on to the exchange of practices on how to foster collaborative leadership to address the psychosocial risks in the education, exchange indeed the existing strategies which are implemented in daily life on a regular basis, very practical, very concrete. But we'll also address the needs that are still not yet mentioned to improve the collaborative leadership, to support the well-being of both students and the pedagogical staff. So I'm very pleased to have with us Nives Počkar from Slovenia. Nives, you have so many hats that I'm not sure if I can name them all, but for sure for this webinar you are with us in the capacity of a school leader of Šolski Center Ljubljana. I believe it's since 20 years, Nives, is it? And 24. Thank you. That's important to specify. Let me tell you, I was in Nives school and I was amazed. All the colleagues were only with good words about you. So we are very curious about, you know, what strategies you have on a daily basis, but you also represent Društvo Ravnatelj, and of course you are also one of the board members of the European Federation of Education Employers. So I'm pretty sure you have more there in your pocket. So the floor is yours, Nives, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm not sure that CEOs follow me with slide, or I can share. Just a moment.
Don't worry, we are on it. It's coming.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay. The next one. The school center Ljubljana is a really big school in Slovenia. In our organization, we have 240 employees, 2,067 students, and 5 different schools, including European school. European school is running with few languages, and it's a lot of problems with these schools, because we involved the students from all Europe. Okay, let's go to our questions. First, about the role. The role of school leaders is extremely complex in Slovenia, as they have to balance teaching, administrative and managerial tasks, while at the same time ensuring the well-being of students, staff, and the wider school community. Principals have two rules in Slovenia. The next one, the education manager, and we are the business manager. Maybe the word the business is not, it's not the correct translate, but I didn't find another word, but business manager. If we are speaking about education leaders, it means that we manage the next one, the pedagogical works of teacher, then promotions the quality of teaching and learning, establish the vision and strategic goals for the school, introduces changes, and promotes teachers' professional development. And if we are talking about the business manager, the next one, we ensure the efficient running of the school. For me, it's very important, transparent management, builds good relationships with all stakeholders, especially with parents, because maybe they don't think in the right way how much is input or how much can influence to the work in the school. We provide support, motivated staff, and resolves all conflicts. I tried that develops a positive organization culture. This is very, very important. The next one. As head teacher, we need different kind of support. One of them is expert support. I mean, education and training with a focus on people management and crisis management. The next is administrative support, quality support staff, I mean my colleagues, secretary, accounting, and others. Digitalization of process for more efficient management. The next is psychological emotional support. We coaching to deal with stress and prevent burnout, and promoting work-life balance. It's very important, it's cooperation, networking with other head teachers, exchanging of experiences, and sharing good practices. The next one. If we're talking about of strategies, in our school, we have developed several strategies and I hope, I'm sure that we use. First, very important, effective communication. We're promoting open dialogue between management and staff. Very transparency, clear and timely communication of changes in the organization, and involving employees in decision-making process, regular feedback, and open door policy. For example, I move around to the school a lot of, I discuss with my teacher all the time, and we have really, I can say, a good atmosphere. Then, the next one, thank you. Training on how to identify and manage stress, burnout, and other risks. We have mental health promotion, preventive medical checkups, and extra medical treatments. The school pay all these treatments. The staff, all staff just apply to this. And the next one is mentoring and support. It's very important that young teacher have the support of older teachers, and the class teacher have special support to another class teacher. Because in Slovenia we have a lot of students with special needs, and I'm not sure that we have enough knowledge how manage with these students. The next time, please. Work-leisure balance. Teachers do not usually have unanswered commitments. All dates are setting in the beginning of the school year. In August, maybe in the first day of September, but we do calendar who is very, very fixed. Then improving interpersonal relationships, team building activities. Example, they suggest that we had safe driving courses. We have learning foreign languages. The teacher from other language schools come in our school, and you can choose the language. It's independent what you want. And then the next one, but I mean, it's very, very important in leading by example. Leaders are role models. Leaders who themselves care about work-life balance and speak only about the importance of mental health. I mean that it's the time that we are speaking about this. The next one, please. What we needed, what the students need. First of all, creating a positive organization culture, trust and respect for each other, involvement in decision making, and recognizing achievements. Then, open and effective communication, regular conversation, feedback, and transparency. And well-being first, introduction of mental health support programs. We have conclusion service, promotion, social emotional learning, and etc. And then, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go too far, go together. And we are working together in our school. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nives. What an exemplary case, right? Sounds incredible, very impressive. Nives, I have actually follow-up question before we move on to Joaquin. You mentioned, there's this open dialogue, effective communication, transparency, and you have the open door policy. So many things put in place. Did you notice that teachers and students are really appreciating and using it? Do you see the difference before, let's say, implementation of those practices and after? You as a school leader, you have, this 360 view on it. Do you see there is an improvement of this, or you still think there's more that can be done?
I see that it's improvement, but never it's enough. A few days ago, we have for all staff in the school training how to be nice when I communication with each other. Very famous speakers, and it was really, really good. And it's very important that we feel good atmosphere, and we are smile, and we say good day, bye bye. This small communication, it's very, very important. And if you are working in my school, you can see that all students say hello. They're very, very nice. And we are going step by step. And I mean that we are not so bad in this.
Okay, no, for sure you're not. I must say, I was also very intrigued by your team building activity, including a safe driving course.
One
I think
teacher
that's
suggested, and I free Saturdays we were going to the polygon, And we had training about saving driving. Nice, very, very nice.
All right, great.
You should know that our school has enough money for this. And maybe it's not the same in the other schools in Slovenia.
Yes, I think that's a very important point you mentioned, and also one of the last that I wanted to bring up. That's incredible that, you know, the trainings that you mentioned, they're all provided and they're paid, and you know, they are there available, and teachers and the staff, just quotation mark for, have to use it, right? So that's great to hear, and thank you very much for inspiring us. Please bear with us as we'll move on to the next speaker. However, at the end we'll have a discussion between all of you. My next speakers also, I'm sure, with many different hats, Joaquim Santos from, I don't want to butcher, but it's FNE Portugal, which is Federação Nacional de Educação, is it? And I'm sure, Joaquim, you'll share more about you during the presentation. From the Portuguese case study, where we are also very curious to hear on your experience about the existing strategies and how to foster collaborative leadership from the trade union side. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So, good morning to all, with a special good morning to Yves in Slovenia, although we can only see her head, but that's enough. So I'm going to talk to you about a good practice in psychological risks in schools. And the name of this, let's say, organization is the School Coexistence Observatory in Portugal, which is a social dialogue organization with different kinds of organizations like unions, parents, school directors, principals, and so on. Next slide, please. So the context is a context we all know. There is an increase in cases of violence in schools involving teachers, students, and educational support staff. The School Coexistence Observatory works to create schools where everyone feels welcome, protected, and able to learn and grow. Its main objective is to promote safe and healthy environments with zero tolerance for indiscipline and violence. This idea came from my federation, which is FNE, the National Federation of Education, which integrates 7 teachers' unions of all sectors and also 3 education support personal unions. And its association, which is called EFEE-ETUCE, which is an association for training and research in education and labor. So at the moment, we have not 8 organizations, but 9. And the organizations which are working together, the first one is my federation, so it is FNE. The second one is CONFAP, which is the National Confederation of Parents Associations in Portugal. Number 3, it's ANDEAP, which is the National Association of Directors of School Groups and Public Schools. We then have AFEE-ETUCE, which is FNE's Association for Training and Research in Education and Labor. We also have the Order of Portuguese Psychologists, the Association for Family Planning, the Institute for Child Support, and an organization called Safe Kids on the Net. This present week, we have gained another partner, which is the Order of Social Workers, and we hope to have soon a representation of secondary and higher education students, which usually work and collaborate with my federation. So we also have a very special person in Porto, because I am from Porto. This is Professor José Matias Alves, which is, he works only with teachers in the Faculty of Education and Psychology of the Portuguese Catholic University in Porto. Next. So what are the main objectives of the observatory? First of all, to monitor and improve the quality of school coexistence in Portugal through mainly collecting good practices in schools. So, and now I'm going to tell you about 5 different objectives. First one, monitoring and analysis. So the observatory monitors and analyzes incidents related to school coexistence, such as indiscipline, violence, bullying, cyberbullying, and so on. This monitoring makes it possible to identify trends and problem areas. In practices, we receive some complaints from parents, from schools. Everything is anonymous. And then we contact the schools to see if that special problem is taken care or not. A second, let's say, objective is to research and studies. So the observatory carries out research and studies on school coexistence with the aim of better understanding the factors that affect the environment in schools. This data supports policies and interventions. At the moment, we are preparing a national survey, which will be made by some experts from the University of Porto, and it will study the effects, let's say, of the school climates on everyone. So on teachers, on school principals, on teachers, and also on parents, and so in all kind of stakeholders which are related to the education, let's say. So reporting platform. We have a platform. It provides a connection for students, parents, teachers, and school workers to report incidents anonymously. The observatory then contacts the schools directly to find out about the progress of the reported cases. These reports contribute to preventive and corrective actions in the future. Another objective is to support for school structures. The observatory guides schools and clusters in setting up structures to deal with conflicts and promote positive coexistence between members of the school community. A final objective is advocacy and awareness raising. It raises awareness about the importance of coexistence at school and advocates for policies that, advocates for policies that guarantee a safe and respectful environment for all. One of its objectives is to collect good practices developed by schools in the area of good school coexistence. So this observatory was born in April 2024 and was presented to the public on 22nd May 2024. On 9 September last year, the observatory was received in Lisbon by the Ministry of Education, who appreciated this idea, let's say the objectives of this kind of organization of different stakeholders. Between January 27 and 31, 2025, the School Coexistence Observatory promoted the School Coexistence Week with the organization of webinars and hybrid seminars open to all audiences, carried out by its different organizations. In one of these hybrid seminars, I have been in the city of Braga in Portugal, where one interesting conclusion was that Portugal is taking, let's say, a good work, or is taking good work in what respects to inclusion of teachers, of immigrants, of students from other countries, But in summary, the schools are forgetting a little the questions of mental health, which respects directly to teachers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joachim. Wow, also great example of an initiative that seems to be very useful and bringing its delivers its objectives, right? So yes, I also join Martina in applause to you, of course. I also have a follow-up question before we pass the floor to Giuseppina. You've mentioned the national survey measuring school climate, if I got it right, yes. Could you perhaps elaborate a little bit more on this one? I know it's going to be conducted by researchers from Porto. However, do you know when is it going to be launched? Is it indeed the whole Portugal, right? Who is your target? What levels of education? Would you have more information? I think it's just very interesting, so would love to hear more about that.
So, Monica, we have just talked about this last week, so we are working on it. But the objective is to promote this seminar, so in Portugal, but then transmitting it to all countries in Europe, probably with ETUCE also, and probably also with the EFEE, because it will be very important, because it will it's not to measure, but let's say to see how the what we call the school climate is affecting all kind of stakeholders, including the students and even including the school results of the students. Mm-hmm. So at the moment I have nothing more to say, but as soon as I have, I can give you all the information. We are trying to look for the experts now in the university, and I think it will be a very interesting survey. And as soon as I have more information, I will tell you immediately.
Of course, great to hear that, and looking forward. Thank you. Last point, and then we move on. You've mentioned I found it's very interesting initiative as well. School Coexistence Week, was it right? The series of different webinars, also hybrid seminars, right? Could you perhaps highlight a few main outcomes or results or any thoughts based on that week? Because it seems something along the lines of what we're trying to do within the European Education Leadership Week. So I've been just wondering what stood out of this initiative.
So in practice, every organization made its own seminar. So the school directors, they organized one seminar, the Parents Association another one, my federation another one, and we tried to look at the most important factors now in schools which are affecting the school communities, let's say. So one of the main conclusions is that there is a perception, as you know, in this project as well, that there is an increase of or a rise of violence issues in schools. So not only within or among students, but some violence on teachers, some kinds of violence on education support personnel as well. And because the social situation is not very easy now in Portugal and in Europe, it is more or less the same. And it seems that the problems are more or less the same in all countries. So in Portugal, we are making a great effort in everything which respects to inclusion. But there are some main problems. One of them is the questions of the digitalization of mobile phones, of the cyberbullying, so which are affecting many students. And as a general factor, so school directors have their own problems, of course. The parents also have their own problems. But a general conclusion is what I just said. It seems that teachers are being a little forgotten. in what respects to this mental health, because they are concentrate on results, on pedagogy, on the students, on parents, on immigrants, on migrants, and so on. And for some reason, teachers feel a little bit alone in some schools, and we have to deal with these problems in order they can feel a little better, and in a way that school climates in schools can also be better in the near future.
That's very interesting. Nice to hear. Great. Interesting points for further discussion for sure, on which we'll follow up soon. Thank you very much, Joachim. And we'll carry on with our student voice, Giuseppina Tucci. I think it's Tucci, right? Secretary General of Organizing Bureau of European School Students Union, OBESU, one of the lead partners of the ELNA network. Giuseppina, so nice to see you again here during different webinars. Yes, please let us know about, initiatives that student unions are taking to support each other. What are you aware of? What do you think can still be done? Perhaps some personal insights, as well as you've been in this field a bit longer. Very curious to hear your thoughts. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting discussion so far. Thank you for also including the perspective of students. I wanted to start by sharing also some, other reflections and insights that we have. OBESU is part of a project called EU Care, which is a research project, an Horizon research project on COVID-19. And actually, there was a big part of the study that was on the mental health, the impact on mental health of students. And I think there are some nice insights that also match a bit of the discussion that has been going on. And I would just like to maybe start from there to kind of like set the scene when it comes to student participation, because we are in this project with 16 universities. And then there is us going around like, we're just here to bring the perspective of students and make sure that the data that you collect on mental health from your research perspective is actually then also, let's say, a representative of the lived experience of these students. And so what the main results that I think it might be interesting for me to highlight, and to sort of like support many of the things that Martina was mentioning before. But so, for example, we found out that older students or students in secondary education have had it strongly, way more strongly than students in primary education, and that this has led to the fact that with students aging, so when we checked what has happened between 2020 and now, and what is the impact, is that actually the pro-social behaviors of the students, like empathy and cooperation, have actually been decreasing. So these competencies are currently and continuing to decrease rather than getting better. So that's one of the first areas where I think it is important that we say, okay, here also from the perspective of students, this is one of our main priorities, making sure that we also work on mental health as a competence, and so on some of the competencies related to it, and some of this emotional development from this point of view. Secondly, for example, the secondary students, and this we have heard a lot, but I think it's always important to repeat, have faced an incredibly tough situation, including and have the number of level of cases of diagnosed anxiety has been skyrocketing, and also bringing and exhibiting more conduct problems such as irritability, also leading to further violence and to violent behaviors online and offline. And that this is learning, in a way, this has highlighted a massive divide. We've had very good schools, very good teachers. We've had, the schools of the Nives that have the capacity, the budget, and the tools to provide the good distance learning environments. And for these, actually, students have had positive experiences, and have also highlighted the development and the sort of like the opportunity of distance learning, but that for the majority of people and learners all over Europe, actually distance learning has just contributed to higher emotional difficulties, isolation, disconnection, and has actually broadened the differences. And then last but not least, and I think this is an interesting thing to highlight, is the gender difference, and also and the reason why we need to look at mental health not as a one-size-fits-all, but as a very individualized and targeted support that we need. Girls, for example, reported higher level of emotional difficulties, including anxiety, sadness, and stress, with higher sensitivity to social isolation, and in a way also due to more academic pressure and societal expectations, while for boys and older young men, in a way, they exhibited higher level of hyperactivity, more impulsiveness, restless behavior, and difficulty with self-regulation. Also due to the fact that many of the socialization that they used to do was taken away during lockdown. And so this for us is a bit of a setting scene in a way. And what have we been doing? I mean, I think we've been coping. And frankly, we have seen it a lot in our network. We do see a renewed and very strong attention to mental health, not only to mental health as a topic that we need to discuss, but also to mental health internally, because also in student activism, let's say students have taken a massive toll on their mental health when it comes to their capacity to engage, their motivation to engage. I mean, lockdown and in generally policy-wise, for example, from lockdown onwards, the number of times and occasions where students are consulted concerning their well-being and their, let's say, their own situation has actually decreased. So this has also heightened the sense of lack of exclusion, and that also impacts mental health. But what initiatives are we taking? Well, we are really investing a lot on peer training. Some of our members, for example, have developed peer training methodologies to sort of like push for peer implemented change towards mental health. This doesn't mean that we take our 15 years old and we tell them, now you become a psychologist. No. But we tell them, okay, now together we're going to go through a path so that you can become an advocate, a strong advocate for mental health, and so that you can also advocate your teachers, your school heads, and above to sort of push for more support and institutional support on mental health, which, as I said, needs to really like be age appropriate, be targeted, and be rooted in this preventive measure and this preventive perspective that especially also is up to date, because the challenges that we face today are many, varied, and the support that students need is varied, and it goes from an anxiety from academic performance to transitioning and changing, your own or exploring your sexuality, and that the sort of psychological support that students need is extremely complex. The identities that students face nowadays are not more complex than they were before, but there's so much more awareness of all of how and access to information that we need providers to actually, for example, provide no judgmental spaces. And this is extremely complicated, especially when the support is linked to certain institutional settings, which in many countries is rather prohibitionist, if you allow me this word, than more, let's say, open-minded. And so this is peer training is one of the things we're doing. We're organizing for solidarity. We're organizing to collect data. So to collect our own, our data is not scientifically perfect. We don't have a perfect methodology that we can publish on Nature, but still we can tell not only the other stakeholders in the school, but also at other levels and more higher institutional levels, the lived experience of people is valid. And mental health and psychology is a science, indeed, is an exact science, is not all fluff, but it's also a lot lived experience and perspective and the challenges that people have. And it is very linked to curricula, it is very linked to schools. I mean, we have been advocating, we've been saying for years that the way that schools are done, this is the death the death of mental health in a way already. Performance is the performance narrative that we've been living since 2008, since the financial crisis, has been doing nothing but actually bringing us deeper and deeper into the challenges of mental health. And so this is on another level. So there's two levels. There's this one level of like peer training, organizing, solidarity, data collection, sort of like, you know, keeping a bit of the intelligence and the survival around. And on the other hand, there is a whole other level, which is the level of rethinking education as it is, that we have been pushing for many years, and that in forum like this, it's something that we can and should be discussing, I think, in a way. So in many of our student unions, for example, they have been for years now practicing a PISA boycott, because they do believe that PISA is it's just yet another teaching to test tool that does nothing but actually produce detrimental effects on mental health of students that do not perform enough, and that actually provides, in certain countries, when used in ways that it is not intended initially to be used, it is also used as a tool to decide where is funding allocated, and that produces that central and urban schools, high performing schools as they like to be called, get more funding, and low performing schools get less funding. And this heightens again social exclusion, and produces more and more mental health and actual other issues that are way beyond mental health. And so really there's this issue of rethinking evaluation, trying new innovative protocols. There are beautiful schools everywhere all over Europe that propose and try now collaborative evaluation as an alternative to assessment, as a nurturing way to sort of like rethink the way that we perceive performance in evaluation, and that has very positive effects on the mental health of students who feel empowered on their own knowledge and competencies, and do not only feel victims of this evaluation, because there is also this constant issue of being at test. And so this is one big realm of rethinking evaluation, and rethinking the way we learn, rethinking the way we sit in a, behind the desk. I mean, this we've been saying for years, and I'm sure many of you have felt it when you were in school. Like, if you don't come from one of those good schools where there are initiatives and there's really an intention to change the vision of education, then you just sit behind the desk from 8 to 2, from 8 to 4, you go home, you do homework, zero time for socialization, and at the end of all of this, you're still told, you have to do another test to get into university, or you need to do 75 years of precarious work before you're actually hired to do something else. So it's a whole narrative that students are it's very tough to be a student. I mean, I've not been a student now for a while, but I don't remember going to school with this like positive and attitude of like, fantastic, I'm gonna have, I went to school already in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis, and all we heard was teachers telling us, but you have to do this because you want a job, because otherwise you're not gonna have a job. Because and actually many of many of my colleagues at school have had a job many years after I had, or many years, we've had differences, and this has done everything but making mental health better. So very confused, because mental health is a big concern. It's a very big concern with many issues. These are some of the things that I think I could start touching upon, and really in a nutshell, what we need a shared vision between all the different stakeholders in the education scenario. We need an understanding that we all matter, and then the mental health of all of the stakeholders involved matters, that we all have different needs and we need different targeted support. I mean, teachers need a different support than students. This is clear, and school heads need a different support than school support staff, but we all need kind of support, and we all need to be able to sit in a room, identify what this support is, and commonly a shared advocate for it with a common vision of education in a way, because until we have a different vision and until we do not believe that students have the same importance in the school setting as school personnel, then we don't go much further and we don't solve a lot, I believe. So voilà, these are some of my thoughts. I hope I was not too long. Yeah, I'm going to now find the mute button. Here it is.
Towards Josephina, that was very, I think, very life-oriented example, no? I mean, we all can resonate, I think, in one this way or the other with what you've mentioned, and no, you are not too long. And actually, I could have listened to you more and chat more about that, because I was a student during COVID, I was a student after COVID, and I was a student before COVID as well. So each of those times has its own, let's say, pros and cons, if you would like. However, I have two follow-up points, perhaps. You mentioned the first project. Was it, if I understood well, was it EU Care, something like that? Would you mind perhaps sharing the link in the chat too? I don't know if there's a project webpage or something. I think that's something that many of our colleagues and audience could also have a look, because I was not aware of many different points that you brought up, in fact. And what you said about, data collection and peer training, investment for solidarity and data collection. And I like what you said actually about, that your data collection is not perfect in the sense of, methodological and this sort of academic approach, if you want, but it is there and you have some decent basis to, to work with. But perhaps similar question to you, as in, we're thinking education as it is, and the PISA boycott. I think there's a big correlation between high performing, right, countries and PISA, and the ratio of suicidal thoughts and suicidal rates, right? So this is alarming. Um, when and how, perhaps, are you able to share this started in you as a student representative? Since when is it that, okay, we don't want those assessing tests anymore, we don't want this, we would like to focus, let's say, shift our mindset in different direction? What was the trigger point? Are you able to identify in time, and do you think your efforts are paying off, in fact?
It's a good question. I shared the link. I mean, just a disclaimer, this is a big research project with lots of data on actually variants and hospitalization and the impact. So it's there's different work packages. You want to look for work package 4. That's the school study. So that's just for you to know when you look, unless you end up studying, other random and very interesting but extremely specific issues about this rethinking education. I mean, I think this has been a very long conversation that's been going on in the student movement. I can tell you since probably 68, in a way. I think all of you have been, if you have been student activists or have been hearing about it, we have been discussing about reshaping the didactics and the pedagogies for a long time. There's big thinkers who talk about it in many ways. From a point of view of PISA more specifically, and the teaching to test sort of narrative, I think for me a big shift was really, and this is why I mention it all the time, the 2008 financial crisis, because that's when, in a way, there was the biggest budget cuts to education that have been there for a while. And that's when government started rediscussing, okay, how do we allocate funding to schools? What is the performance related to it? We need to perform better, to have better results, to be more competitive, to have better work force. So really, like, education became sort of like big tool for the labor market. And since education became a tool for the labor market, that's when students started to say, okay, actually, wait a second, we actually want education for the sake of education. We want education because we want to grow as humans and citizens, and we do not care necessarily about the economic gain to it. And so that's, I think that's the big shifting point, the moment when testing, well, already there have been for a long time critiques to the way assessment has been done. But in this situation, it was when we said testing can become a meter of deciding how much schools get as funding. And so, in some countries, this became a reality. In some countries, it was just an exercise of rhetoric, something that was said but never done. But it was still a good moment for students to say, okay, wait and stop. We never want this to happen. We never want our performance to decide how much our school gets. And so that's when students decided to boycott, to stop providing data. That was one of the two aspects. And the second aspect was actually this aspect of complete lack of looking for any other psychosocial, for example, background that could explain some of the performance of lack of performance that PISA looks at. And so, voila, these I think is some of the things.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing these. Right. So we reached a moment when we'll open the floor for wider discussion with all of you. Perhaps I'll invite our panelists, and of course you, Martina, as well, if you'd like. Joachim, Nives, any reflections on each other's contributions, on what Giuseppina just introduced as well? How does it look from your perspective? Do you think that the needs of students that were just raised could be introduced in your strategies to address the psychosocial well-being in your respective contexts?
Yes, Monica, I agree totally with Giuseppina concerning the PISA and the bad things of PISA in financing on students, and also on teachers. We are not talking about PISA on teachers, but of course we are here in a European context. But I know some cases, for example, from Japan, of teachers who have committed suicide because of the PISA results of their schools, because the pressure is so great in some schools in Japan so that schools can have good results, that some teachers can handle this problem. Of course, FNE, my federation, we always have worked with students, mainly with secondary students, and we are aware of all the problems that Giuseppina has talked us about, mainly concerning with the examinations. So in Portugal, it is very, very difficult, this question of examinations, mainly when we are talking of entering the higher education system. So, and students, we also know from PISA, from mental health results, that students in Portugal suffer more than usual in other countries in Europe because of the results in examinations. So we know about these problems. We agree with everything that she has talked about, and of course, our survey will also include all these aspects concerning secondary students and students in higher education as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Joachim. Nives, how about you? Any reflections from your side? You might as well also disagree. I think it's also good to disagree sometimes. There's more space, for discussion. But of course, feel free to jump in. Nives, you're muted, just in case. I'm not sure if.
Just to this point, if we are talking about the PISA researchers, I mean that that we are not in the good way, because in our school we have every year smaller and smaller numbers of students who participate in this questionnaire, or these researchers. I mean that is a problem that we don't care about this communication with parents. Why is PISA important? And if are we very honest, political field need these researchers. I'm not sure that if we have any results of this PISA in Slovenia do something different. If we use or build a new strategy, I'm not sure. I'm very critical in this way, of course. But I know I'm so long in the system, and we always talking about this PISA result. But I should ask, what we did different? And the answer is, I don't know. And this is the problem, I mean.
Indeed, thank you. I was muted. Before we carry on, actually, and follow up also on this one, I wanted to have our audience a bit more reactivated and to contribute to the second slide after the thoughts, that all the panelists shared. So if we could please share the second slide, the Mentimeter, so we can all share our thoughts as they are fresh and after different contributions. Indeed. So what are the two keywords that come to your mind when it comes to collaborative leadership in education and psychosocial well-being? We might need a QR code first, if I may ask, because now we are displaying the answers. So thanks a lot to also colleagues on the back end, of course, for supporting us. Yes, I'll invite everyone to reflect on this one and type really two keywords. Not one, not three, two. And the more we have in terms of ideas, the better. So I imagine it's coming now. That's exactly the case. So I'll do it also with you. Understanding, discussion, communication, make alliances. I think that goes along the line of what Giuseppina also mentioned about the shared vision and that we have to really sit down together, come up with something that is a common goal to move on. Collegiality, openness, commitment, diversity, inclusion, solidarity, collaboration, of course, part of the collaborative leadership, right? Understanding. Okay, so many words going, in very similar directions as well. So I find it very, very insightful. Carrying on, actually, and now that we mentioned a couple of times parents, I really regret we're not able to secure also parents to this panel. Please carry on adding the words. However, I've been mentioned. I mean, Nives, you mentioned in your presentation, that parents don't always know or don't always think in a right way, and they have to be, let's say, constructively be put back. And also you, Joachim, in your objectives of the observatory, you've mentioned parental role, and at the beginning, Martina also introduced parental interference based on the results. And moving on to the shared vision, how can we make sure that all of the stakeholders are really on the same page, in fact? Do you think there should be a sort of additional initiative? Should we create a common, I don't know, board goal objective set out? How can we approach this? How can we make sure that all the stakeholders are fully represented, are on the same page? Would any of you have an idea in which direction it could go? So it's either the question to you, Nives, to you, Joachim, and to you, Giuseppina. And I'll be happy, of course, to hear more from participants. Yes, Nives, go for it.
I think that, first of all, they have me informed, and we should discuss about this. If we discuss about these problems, just one meeting in the year or in the month, it's not enough. First of all, we should discuss, and then we should do something. And we should go step by step. But unfortunately, if I can say about the stakeholders, like the parents, in Slovenia, the parents don't come to the secondary school because we established the electronic way application, and they use emails, they use this application, and they don't come physical in the school. And I miss this contact with the parents. And I'm sure that we should do more in this way. Example, if I prepare training or just nice education, maybe education about drugs, example. I have 2,000 parents, so 4,000 parents. How many do you have? Maybe 10. And this is not good. We should motivate the parents, all stakeholders, that we work together on this field. I mean that this is very important, and I'm sure that we should start immediately.
Mm. But actually, I was wondering, so you have 4,000 parents, right? Let's say in your school. Is there any sort of initiative on parents board? Because I know in Poland, there's often parents board. Like in every school, there's a board of parents out of, I don't know, 10 parents representing the voice of the whole, parental community. Is it a common practice as well?
Yes, it is the same practice. We have five parents board because there are five schools, but they come, sit down, and maybe discuss about the values, about the marks, but that's end. No.
Okay. So it's rather narrow scope, let's say. All right. Thank you. Joachim, Josepina, any other thoughts to build on this?
From me, I think I also think that it should. I mean, it's not about one meeting per year. It's more about a constant cooperation. It's about having, I mean, valuing really these representatives bodies that there are. I mean, sometimes there are I don't know, school councils that have representation of teachers, parents, students, school personnel. But from our experience, very often some of them, they are tick boxes. And so there is really not, for example, a strong motivation of the parents' body because, if their voice is then not fully heard, then why would they run? Or because there is such a diversity then within the parental and the student body that, it's very hard to create these representative structures, but they do exist. And I think we should just value them. And in a way, this is why, I mean, we've been saying for many years, teachers, employers, your social partners, and I think you should be 100%. But why aren't students a social partner? Why isn't student representative also, why are student representatives also valued and recognized for their importance and relevant contributions when they are the biggest constituency in schools? I mean, if you think about it, schools are composed of students, and then there is, percentages. Yeah, parents are the only thing that's more, because often it's, well, one or double the number of or triple for families are very different. But I think what is important is that we also ground in topics. There are topics that are controversial and that sort of have a different understanding. Every stakeholder has a different understanding. But mental health and the well-being of everyone is one of the topics where there should be no controversy. So it's one of the topics when we can start our actual cooperation with a common vision and say, okay, we have to first fight stigma, because also there is still many people, many parents, many students who have an issue with stigma around mental health. And then we need to fight this epidemic, and we need to actually find solutions to live a happier life. Okay, we're not going to solve all of them because a lot of them are structural issues and they don't depend on individuals. But I think the key for me is sitting in a room, locking ourselves in a room and saying, okay, we're not here to discuss, salaries or continuous professional development, for which everyone has a different view. We're here to discuss mental health. We all want to be fine, and we all want our teachers and our students and our, school heads to thrive. I think that's the key.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So the next step would be that we all lock ourselves in the room, right? Let's do that. Of course, it's with a blink of an eye. I know that Joachim, I think you were also unmuted in one moment. You also wanted to contribute, and then we'll be rounding it off, as I also see one more additional comments in the chat. Joachim.
Thank you, Monica. I was thinking that what we are trying to build in Portugal could be done at European level as well, because there are many organizations represent, for example, parents. We have at least two great organizations of parents at European level. And once I'm here with ETUCE and EFEE could be a part of this, and probably you could think about doing something specifically on matters on mental health or on climate of schools or something like that. Something could be done at European level. I guess that everyone could help, and everyone could be very helpful.
Joachim, I think your suggestion couldn't be more timely as a social dialogue call opens soon. And perhaps that could be something that we could try to translate into a project and scale it up. Why not? Very open to have that as well. We have one comment in chat from Claudia. To also share some thoughts on attempts at preventive measures. So again, we are talking back about this prevention and that school situation do not become more difficult than they are. Claudia, if you don't mind elaborating more in the chat, what do you mean exactly with not becoming more difficult? Is it in terms of tackling it or handling the situation? I'm not sure to fully follow. You still have 3 minutes to do that. In any case, I'll be slowly rounding off the discussion as I'm mindful of each other's time on a Friday, still morning. So first of all, we started with research findings from the APRES COVID project, where Martina kindly introduced to us when we touched upon the topics of staff fatigue, student challenges, but also digitalization and mental health of both teachers and students. We touched upon briefly the guidelines, which need to be more effectively implemented and to be more straightforward. Nives, Joachim, and Giuseppina, you presented to us, each of your perspectives from different angles. Nives, you mentioned the effective communication, transparency that needs to be implemented right away. The open door policy, which I really, really enjoyed. Joachim, with your observatory, you're about to launch a survey, which will be following very closely to measure the school climate, to assess the strategies put in place. And Giuseppina, I think it was very vocal from you to hear that we need to rethink education as it is. And I like one of the sentences said that you've been coping. And I think that's a good summary of many different things, that we've all been coping in our each constituencies and in our different manner. However, the conclusion is very straightforward. We need to work together and have a shared vision towards the same objectives, because we are all the sides of pretty much the same coin, and we have all the common goods as a priority. With this, I will thanks a lot to first of all to our panelists, very much for your insightful contributions, to our audience, to colleagues from both ETUCE and EFEE Secretariat for making this happen and bringing us all together. With that keep in mind, a short last slide at the end, please. Saving the date for the APRES COVID final conference on 17th and 18th of June in Brussels, Place Luxembourg. Even more precise, we will be very happy to have you there. And well, as usual, the more the merrier. That's it from my side, and we hope to stay in touch for the future. The slide is coming. Yes, it is there. This way you can save the date in your calendars. Please pencil in the agenda, and voila, that's it. I wish you a great rest of the day and already a great weekend. Thank you very much. See you next time.